There are places in the world that seem to defy everything we know about human history. They rise out of the earth like whispers from another age, daring us to question our most basic assumptions. Long before the pyramids of Egypt, before Stonehenge, even before the first seeds of agriculture were sown, people we often call cave dwellers created something astonishing. These men and women who fought daily against hunger and cold, who hunted gazelles with sharpened stones and gathered berries in the wild, left behind a legacy that should have been impossible for their time. And yet it is there, carved in stone, waiting for us to uncover it. Imagine a world at the end of the last ice age, where icy winds swept across barren plains, and survival was never guaranteed. Families huddled in caves for warmth, fire crackling against the night, while outside predators roamed, wolves, lions, and even larger beasts now long extinct. To live one more day was already a triumph, and yet somehow these same people managed to move massive stones, each weighing more than 16 tons, across uneven ground, arranging them with precision in great circles. It was not mere survival, it was vision. In 1994, on a forgotten hill in southeastern Turkey, a discovery shook the world of archaeology. Beneath the soil, archaeologists uncovered Göbekli Tepe, a monumental site dated to more than 11,000 years ago. Its pillars, taller than any man and shaped like giant T's, stood in silent rows, decorated with carvings of foxes, snakes, vultures, and abstract symbols. Older than agriculture, older than pottery, this site challenged the very timeline of human history. How could cave dwellers, without writing or wheels, create something so advanced? The mystery deepens when we realize this was not a small shrine or temporary shelter. Göbekli Tepe was vast, built with deliberate planning, and it demanded the work of hundreds, perhaps thousands of people. That alone suggests something we did not expect from Stone Age communities: organization, cooperation, and a shared sense of purpose beyond daily survival. These were not just scattered tribes. They were builders of meaning, creating a sacred space that spoke to something far deeper than food or shelter. And yet, perhaps the greatest puzzle lies not only in its construction, but in its deliberate burial. Thousands of years after its creation, Göbekli Tepe was carefully covered with earth by the very people who built it. Why would they hide their greatest achievement? Was it protection, ritual, or fear? The answer remains elusive, and with each layer of soil removed, new questions arise. What we do know is this: the men and women of the Stone Age were not as simple as we once believed. Their story, carved in stone, is far from finished. The people who built Göbekli Tepe were hunters and gatherers, moving with the seasons and surviving from what nature offered. They tracked herds of gazelles across open plains, fished in nearby rivers, and collected nuts, berries, and roots from the wild. At night, their shelters were simple: caves or temporary huts of wood and hide, but their minds reached far beyond immediate needs. They dreamed in stone, carving images that told stories only they could fully understand. Life was fragile, yet community was strong. Cooperation meant survival, whether in hunting a large animal or defending against predators. The construction of Göbekli Tepe suggests this cooperation reached a scale unseen before. Hundreds would have been needed to haul stones, prepare food, and carve details into the pillars. Each man, woman, and child played a role, their lives interwoven in a project greater than themselves. This was not only survival, it was society forming before our eyes. Archaeologists believe that ritual and belief played a central role in this unity. The pillars, some decorated with dangerous animals like snakes and scorpions, may have symbolized forces both feared and revered. Gatherings at Göbekli Tepe could have been moments of ceremony, feasting and storytelling around fires, where hunters spoke of the animals they faced and shamans interpreted signs from the sky. Such events strengthened bonds, turning survival into shared culture. And still, the technical questions remain. How did they move stones so heavy without beasts of burden or metal tools? Some suggest they dragged them on sledges of wood, lubricated with animal fat. Others imagine ropes of twisted fiber and the sheer strength of dozens working together. Every possibility only deepens our respect for these early builders. They were not primitive minds. They were innovators, solving problems we still struggle to understand. The more we study Göbekli Tepe, the more it reshapes our view of human history. What once seemed like the slow march from caves to cities now looks different. Perhaps civilization did not begin with farming alone, but with belief, with the human desire to gather, to build, to remember. In those carved stones lies evidence that the search for meaning came long before the plough. And that revelation forces us to ask, have we underestimated the true spirit of the men and women we call cave dwellers? When we step deeper into the mystery of Göbekli Tepe, one question dominates: why was it built at all? These people lived in a world of constant struggle, where every hunt could end in death and every winter storm could wipe out an entire clan. And yet they chose to invest time and energy into a site that did not feed them, shelter them, or defend them. This suggests that meaning, ritual, and belief were as essential to survival as fire and food. They were seeking something greater. Some scholars believe the carvings represent the animals that defined their lives, the foxes they hunted, the snakes they feared, the vultures circling above. These symbols may have carried spiritual power, turning the site into a bridge between the world of the living and the spirits beyond. Others argue that Göbekli Tepe may have served as a gathering point for scattered tribes, where rituals forged alliances, marriages, and peace among people who otherwise lived apart. In either case, it was not random. It was planned, deliberate, and meaningful. What makes this site even more extraordinary is its age. Carbon dating shows it was built around 9600 BC, long before agriculture took hold in the Fertile Crescent. For decades, archaeologists assumed farming came first, and only then could people settle and build monuments. Göbekli Tepe turned that idea upside down. Here it seems the desire to worship, to gather, and to build may have inspired farming, not the other way around. Belief, not bread, may have been the spark of civilization. This forces us to rethink what it means to be human. If men and women of the Stone Age were capable of organizing such projects, then their intelligence, creativity, and social complexity were far beyond what we once thought. They were not merely reacting to their environment, they were shaping it, leaving behind a story etched in stone that still challenges us today. Each pillar is like a voice calling from the deep past. We were more than survivors, we were creators. And yet, for all we have uncovered, Göbekli Tepe holds back its greatest secrets. The meaning of the carvings, the exact rituals performed, the reasons for its burial all remain unanswered. Every excavation uncovers new questions rather than answers, leaving us suspended between knowledge and mystery. Perhaps that is its greatest power, to remind us that the past is never as simple as we believe, and that even the oldest stones can whisper new truths. To understand the mystery of Göbekli Tepe, we must also look at the time when it was built. The end of the Ice Age brought massive changes to the environment. Glaciers retreated, rivers shifted, and fertile lands began to appear across the Near East. For humans, this was both a gift and a challenge. Herds moved in new directions, food sources changed, and survival required adaptation. In this unstable world, building a place of gathering may have been a way to find stability, a center of meaning in the chaos of nature. Some researchers suggest that climate itself may have been the force that drove people together. Harsh winters and sudden droughts could have forced scattered groups to cooperate. By uniting in rituals, they may have shared resources, strengthened alliances, and found hope. The stones of Göbekli Tepe then become more than architecture. They become symbols of human resilience in the face of shifting earth and sky. Others point to a different possibility: disease. A sudden outbreak among fragile communities could have devastated entire clans. In such moments of fear, rituals often become more intense. People seek explanation and comfort in shared ceremonies, hoping to appease forces they cannot control. Could Göbekli Tepe have been a place where the sick were mourned, where the living sought protection from invisible threats? The carvings of vultures and snakes may reflect such fears, blending survival with spirituality. And still, there is the cosmic hypothesis. Around 12,800 years ago, evidence suggests a comet or asteroid may have struck Earth, causing rapid climate shifts in an event known as the Younger Dryas. Some believe symbols carved at Göbekli Tepe depict this catastrophe, a memory etched in stone of fire from the sky. If true, then the site is not only a temple, but also a record of one of the most dramatic events in human history. Each theory, climate, disease, cosmic disaster, offers a piece of the puzzle. None alone can explain everything. Yet together, they remind us that the builders of Göbekli Tepe were not passive victims of nature. They were observers, interpreters, and storytellers, turning hardship into meaning and stone into memory. Their legacy shows us that even in the earliest days, humanity was already searching for answers to the greatest mysteries of life and death. The carvings themselves remain one of the most fascinating elements of Göbekli Tepe. On the tall T-shaped pillars, we find foxes leaping, serpents slithering, vultures stretching their wings, and abstract symbols whose meanings we cannot fully decode. For the men and women of that time, each image likely held power, shaping the way they understood their world. Perhaps the fox was not only an animal but a spirit guide, the snake a warning, the vulture a messenger between life and death. These stones were not mute. They spoke to those who carved them. To imagine the scene is to step into their world. Hunters returned from long days, their bodies sore and their hands calloused from dragging stone. Children gathered near fires, listening to elders speak of spirits hidden in the wilderness. By torchlight, carvers chipped figures into limestone, each strike echoing through the night. These were not random decorations. They were acts of memory, of teaching, of binding generations together through story. In those carvings, the community saw itself reflected. Some archaeologists suggest the layout of Göbekli Tepe may have represented more than ritual. It could have been a map of the cosmos, or a calendar tracking seasons, stars, and cycles of life. If so, then the men of the Stone Age were not just hunters of animals, but hunters of meaning, raising their eyes from the earth to the heavens. In a time without writing, stone became their book, each pillar a page, each carving a word etched for eternity. And yet, for all its beauty, the site also carries a shadow. Why did they carve animals of danger, scorpions, snakes, and predators so prominently? Were these images meant to frighten, to warn, or to protect? Perhaps they believed that by carving the creatures they feared, they could gain power over them. Fear and faith often walk together, and here we see both in stone. The more we uncover, the clearer it becomes. Göbekli Tepe was not only a place of gathering, but a mirror of the human soul. In its stones we see fear, hope, survival, and belief. The men and women we once called primitive reveal themselves instead as thinkers, dreamers, and creators whose stories still reach us across 12,000 years. The sheer effort behind Göbekli Tepe also forces us to ask, how did they organize such a task? Moving stones that weighed as much as elephants required not just strength, but coordination. Archaeologists imagine teams dragging slabs on wooden sledges, lubricating paths with water or animal fat to ease the burden. Dozens, perhaps hundreds, would have pushed and pulled together, their muscles straining, their voices calling out in rhythm. In that shared labor, bonds were forged as strong as the stones themselves. For a community of hunter-gatherers, such organization seems extraordinary. These were not farmers settled in villages with steady harvests. They were nomads, living at the mercy of nature. And yet, for reasons still not fully understood, they came together to build something permanent. Perhaps the act itself gave them a sense of identity, a way to say, we belong here even if only for a moment. In building, they transcended the endless cycle of hunt and hunger. Food must have been central to this project. While some hauled stones, others hunted and gathered to feed the workers. Gazelle bones found at the site suggest massive feasts where hundreds may have eaten together. Imagine the scene: fires burning in the night, roasting meat filling the air, drums and chants rising as people celebrated their achievement. These gatherings were not just construction, they were community, cemented by shared effort and shared meals. This cooperation reveals a turning point in human history. To build Göbekli Tepe, tribes had to trust one another, to coordinate beyond daily survival. This suggests that belief, ritual, and shared purpose could unite people before politics or farming ever existed. It was the dawn of organized society, born not from crops, but from faith and stone, and yet the site was never finished. Many enclosures remain incomplete, stones left where they fell, as if the builders abandoned their work suddenly. Whether through climate shifts, disease, or other forces, the project ended, leaving behind a silent question carved into the hillside. Why did they stop? One of the most haunting mysteries of Göbekli Tepe is its deliberate burial. Thousands of years after its construction, the site was carefully covered with earth and stone. This was no accident of time, it was intentional. The very people who built it chose to hide it, sealing away their greatest work. Why would a community invest so much energy in a monument, only to bury it beneath the soil? The question lingers like a shadow across history. Some scholars suggest the burial was a ritual act, a way of closing a chapter in their spiritual life. Perhaps the people who gathered there believed the place had served its purpose, and to protect its power, they returned it to the earth. Others imagined fear, a catastrophe or new belief system that made the old ways dangerous. By burying Göbekli Tepe, they may have sought to protect themselves from the very spirits they once called upon. The careful nature of the burial speaks volumes. Stones were not toppled or smashed, they were preserved. It is as if they intended future generations, or perhaps the gods themselves, to find it again. This preservation is why the site remained hidden for millennia, untouched by later civilizations. In their decision to cover it, the builders became accidental archivists, ensuring their voices would one day be heard. The act also raises questions about the fragility of human culture. If a site so monumental could be abandoned and hidden, how many other stories have been lost forever? How many temples, villages, or sacred spaces lie beneath our feet, erased by time or by human hands? Göbekli Tepe may be unique in what we have found, but it reminds us of the vast silence that surrounds human history. In this silence, mystery thrives. The burial of Göbekli Tepe is not just a puzzle of archaeology. It is a mirror of humanity's shifting beliefs, fears, and hopes. It shows us that even the earliest people were capable of profound choices, choices that still echo across 12,000 years. And in those echoes, we hear the voices of men and women who, though long gone, remain connected to us through stone and earth. When archaeologists compare Göbekli Tepe to other ancient monuments, its uniqueness becomes even clearer. Stonehenge in England, built more than 6,000 years later, is often seen as a marvel of early engineering. Yet Göbekli Tepe predates it by millennia, raising questions about the origins of such architectural ambition. Likewise, the pyramids of Egypt, long considered humanity's earliest great monuments, are younger still. How could cave dwellers have achieved something so advanced, long before the civilizations we usually call the first? This comparison challenges the traditional timeline of human progress. For decades, scholars believed that only after farming stabilized communities could large structures be built. But Göbekli Tepe flips that order. Here, belief and ritual appear to have come first, inspiring organization on a grand scale, while agriculture followed later. The site forces us to reconsider what truly sparked civilization. Was it bread and harvests, or was it the need to gather, to worship, and to create meaning together? The echoes of Göbekli Tepe can also be seen in Mesopotamia, the so-called cradle of civilization. Cities like Uruk and temples like the ziggurats may trace part of their inspiration back to these early experiments in stone. Though thousands of years separate them, the idea of monumental architecture as a center of spiritual and social life may have begun here, on this windswept hill in southeastern Turkey. If so, then cave dwellers were the first to plant the seeds of urban culture, and yet no direct line can be drawn. There are no written records, no preserved myths, no names of the builders. We are left with silence and stone, forced to read meaning from carvings and alignments. The gap between Göbekli Tepe and later civilizations is filled with shadows. Still, those shadows suggest continuity, that even if the builders vanished, their ideas did not. Others came later, walking the same path, building in stone, reaching for the sky. What is certain is that Göbekli Tepe proves humanity's capacity for vision far earlier than we once believed. The men and women we call Stone Age hunters were not merely surviving. They were imagining, shaping, and creating a legacy that would echo into the future. They remind us that progress is not a straight line, but a tapestry, woven from belief, resilience, and the human desire to leave a mark upon the earth. To step into the lives of those who built Göbekli Tepe, we must picture more than stones. We must see the people themselves. These were men and women who lived close to the land, clothed in hides, carrying tools of flint and bone. Their children played at the edges of camps, chasing one another under the watch of elders. Fires crackled in the evenings, and the smell of roasting meat mingled with smoke that curled into the night sky. Their world was raw, dangerous, and yet filled with meaning. Hunting was their lifeblood. Bands set out at dawn, tracking gazelles across the plains, reading the ground for prints, listening for movement in tall grasses. Success meant feasts, failure meant hunger. Every hunt carried risk, injuries from wild animals, accidents with primitive weapons, exhaustion from long chases.